Hi, this is DarkFox127 and welcome to another Skyrim Creation Kit tutorial video. In today's video we're going to be doing a little more scripting, and it's going to involve my unique display cases, which are actually available as a resource on the Skyrim Nexus. So I'm going to be using those display cases, and I'm going to show you how to do what I've done in a couple of my mods and my upcoming mod, which is Corinthia Tower Reborn, and that is to use them as actual displays for unique weaponry, where you can place items in such as weaponry, armors, anything else that you like to put in there, and have it so that when you put the items in the display case they actually appear, and when you take them out obviously they are removed. Now to get started you want to go ahead and find container under world objects, and we're going to use an existing case just for the sound effects. So I'm going to look for the Winterhold bookcase, double click on that, give it a unique reference, change the name obviously to display case, wipe out what's in there, make sure that respawns are unticked. Then I'm going to change the model. So obviously if you want to use the same display case as me, the actual resource is available on the Nexus and the links are in the description below this video, and you'll have to just dump them into your data folder. So you'll go under meshes and you should find DF127, go under there, under furniture, display cases, and I've got a few different versions but I'm just going to use the first version. Click OK. If you get this error message just hit ignore and you should see that the display case appears then. Now if you happen to download all of the meshes and textures and dump them into the data folder after you've actually loaded the creation kit, then what you might find, I'll just click OK, create new form. What you might find is that when you go to place it into the render window, that you might get a big exclamation mark. If that happens, just hit F5 and it'll refresh the cell and it should appear. Now when you go to upload your mod, obviously you're going to need to make sure that you include all of my resource files that you use in the mod, and if you don't know how to create a BSA and pack them all in, then you can go and check out my most recent video on that. Now I'm just going to place the display case in here, and the next thing that I'm going to do is add the script onto it. So again, this resource, this ESP along with the script, it's all going to be available in the description below. So I'm just going to add my script in here, but what I do recommend is that you don't just place my script in and fill in the properties. You need to create your very own version of this, very much like I recommended in my trophies tutorial as well. You need to make your own script version, because if everybody went ahead and created a mod that used my display cases and then used that script, all of them, it's going to clash with the mods. It's not going to be very good. So I'm just going to quickly try and explain how this works. So I know it looks a bit daunting, but it's pretty simple and there's not a lot that you're going to have to do to it apart from just add extra references and properties and such for your own display items. So at the top, obviously, we've got our list of properties. We've got the object references for the 3 items that I'm going to actually be displaying. So these will be the static versions that appear in the display case. Now I've got display ref 1, 2 and 3. The way I'm going to work this, I'm going to do the Dawnbreaker. So that's the weapon, the sword. And then I'm going to have the Spellbreaker, which is the piece of armor, which is the shield. And then I'm going to have the third ref is going to be Chillrend. Now the third one's going to be working a little different, which I'll explain in a minute. So that's my 3 references. Then I've got the form lists. The form lists are going to be item, enable. So it's going to be the list of items that go in the container, and then the list of references that get enabled, and then they'll just match. So it'll be like 1 to 1, 2 to 2, and that'll make sense in a moment. Then I've got a third form list, which is going to be to do with the third reference, or any reference that has multiple versions of itself. So Chillrend happens to have about 6 different versions because there's different leveled versions which are more powerful than the other one. And that's why we've got to have it have its own form list, and why I stated it, sort of stood it out as the third reference there. Then we've got an integer, which is just a nice little addition, which basically says if the integer's ticked to 1, then you're going to be restricting this display case to display case items only. Anything else will be thrown back at the player. But if you turn this off, then it's going to allow anything to be placed in the container, but anything specific that can be shown in the container will then just appear. So I'm going to actually be restricting this, so I can show you how that works when we go to test in game. Now we have two events. The first event is what happens when you add an item, and the second event is obviously what happens when you remove an item. They're both a little different. The first event for adding has a little more in it, whereas the removal one doesn't. Now the one line which is in both of these events is something that you're not going to have to change. You don't really need to mess with. And all this basically does is matches up the form lists. So it makes sure that Dawnbreaker enables the Dawnbreaker reference and so on. So that's pretty simple, and then it will just enable the right thing there. Now the next part is to do with obviously checking what's going in, whether it has to enable something and so on. So the first line here, it says if item restrict is on and the item belongs to the container. So if it's actually a display item, then it's not removed, just this top part will happen here. So it will get enabled and so on. The next one says that if the item added has multiple versions, so in this case for this display that I'm setting up, it's going to be chillrend, then it's going to make sure that the chillrend reference is enabled and check that it's in the actual form list that we create for it. The next one here is if the item restrict is on, but the item doesn't actually belong in the container, so it's going to restrict it to display items and say you're placing something in that isn't in that list, it's going to throw it right back at the player and it's going to show a little message here. And the other thing is obviously if there is no restriction, then everything can just go in and the top part will just take effect if it's a display item. Then it's obviously that line again, like I mentioned, so it's just matching up the form lists. And then there's a hell of a lot less here. This is only going to be here if you've got something that has multiple items. And it's basically saying if it's one of the chillrend versions, it'll disable it from the display case when it's removed. So it's really quite simple, and actually all you'd need to change, so for every reference, every weapon that you want to show in there, or piece of armor, whatever it might be, it can even be a miscellaneous item, then you're just going to have a reference for each of them. And like I say, if it's got multiple versions, you're going to have to add an extra reference for that. And you're also going to have to add extra if statements for it here. And it's going to have its own multi sort of form list there. So click OK on those. Now the first thing I'm going to do is create the form list. So I'm going to go under miscellaneous, form list, create brand new one, and just give them form IDs. So do the enable one. Just copy that part there. Create the items one. And create one for chillrend. Now what I want to do is create static versions of these items. Now in most cases you'll find that there are already static versions of certain weapons that appear on the load screen, or the actual first person versions of them. So when you're in first person, it's what you see. So if you click, well, type in that one ST and go under static, you'll see there's loads of first person versions of them. So if I put in Dawn, I'll see I've got the Dawnbreaker here. However, what you might notice is the scabbard is on it, and you don't really want that in the display case. Now if you're putting it somewhere along the bottom maybe or whatever, you might want that on. So if you do want it on, you haven't got to worry about it. But what I'm going to do is create a new version of the static item. So I make a unique ID, and I'm going to remove that. I'm going to go edit, and then you'll see SCB, hit new, type in null, and I'm just going to nullify that so you can't see it. You can see it's hidden it there. Click OK, OK, and create new form. Now even if you're going to keep that on, then I still recommend that you just create a new form. It's nice and tidy. Now of course if it doesn't already have a first person version or just a static version of whatever you place in the display case, then you're going to have to copy the model and create a new version of it, edit the model, paste it in. So now, as you can see, I want to place this in the display case, but it's going to be a little bit awkward with the glass in the way. So I'm going to just edit this, and I'm going to do what I just did with the sword there. I'm going to go down, you'll see it's named glass, and I'm temporarily going to remove that using the null texture. That way I can easily place my items in here now without much trouble. Just going to position this. Doesn't have to be perfect for now. The next thing I'm going to use is Spellbreaker, which again has its own static version, but I'm just going to create my own. So I'm just going to use what I named this as, just to make it easier. Click OK, create new version. Then I'm going to drag that in. I'm going to place that next to that one. And now I'm going to need a static version of Chillrend, which again we happen to have one of. But it's got the scabbard again, so I'm going to change that. Nullify that texture. Create new version. Drag and drop that in. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give them unique references because it's going to be easier to select them in the object window. Dawnbreaker, whoops, Spellbreaker, and Chillrend. And what you want to do is make sure that these are all ticked initially disabled. So best thing to do is click on one, hold down Control, click on the others, hit the batch menu, and then click on Set Initially Disabled. Hit do, and just check one of them to make sure it's worked, so they're not there to begin with. Now I'm going to add these to the actual form list that I created, so I'm just going to go df127, open up enable. So this is the references that I've just created, so I'm going to put the first two in. I'm not going to put the third one in that has multiple versions, that's going to be handled by a different form list, so I'm only going to put these two in here. Drag them in, you can see it says reference 0 and 1, and it's important to get the numbers right in a moment, so I'm going to drag that there, double click on items, then I'm going to get the actual items for them, so weapon, make sure your form list window is visible, oops, wrong one, sorry, drag it into items, and then I need armor and Spellbreaker, and put that in. Like I say, put them side by side. Number 1 is Dawnbreaker, number 0 is Dawnbreaker, and 0 is Dawnbreaker there, and then 1 is Spellbreaker, 1 is Spellbreaker on there. So confirm both of those, make sure they match, otherwise you're going to have trouble. Then I'm going to need a form list for the other one, which I already created, so edit that and put in all of the versions of Chillrend. So as you can see, 6 versions of it. Drag and drop those in. It's okay. It doesn't matter about the numbers on that one though. Now what I'm going to do is double click on my container, edit the model, and I'm just going to put the glass back in. So I'm going to delete that null texture. So as you can see, that's changed. Then I'm going to fill my properties in. Now obviously with your script you can pretty much name all the references as you name them on there, so you can just hit autofill, but in my case this is just the standard kind of example script, so I'm going to have to fill these in. The other thing I need to do, as you can see here, is decide whether my integer is going to be 0 or 1, so I'm just going to do that as 1 because like I said I want to restrict this container. And now I'm going to fill in my properties. So I've got the multiple versions of chillrend. I'll do the form lists for the enable, and then items, and then I've just got my display refs. So I'm actually just going to, best thing to do actually there, yeah, I've probably done that a little too early. I'll just remove the glass again because I'll be able to select them. Just makes that a little easier. Just check your reference there as well, make sure it's right. Another reason why you might want to name them so it's easier to check them over. Chillrend there, click OK, 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 just confirm everything. Last thing I'm going to do so I can test it is go into container, type in chest, get whatever chest I want here. Double click on one of them, just going to give it a unique name. And then call it test, change the name, empty everything that's in there, and then put in the different weapons again that I'm using in my display. Create new form. Then I'm going to put that in the cell. And hit save. Now what I'm going to do is just go in game and test this out. Okay, so here we are in the test cell, and if we just go over to the chest here, as you can see we've got the chillrend versions here, the Dawnbreaker and Spellbreaker. I'm going to take those out, go up to the display case, actually put the glass back on as well. And then I'm going to just place any version of chillrend in, so I'm just going to go with that one. As you can see, it appears in the display case, and I've also got Dawnbreaker. And then I am going to remove those. As you can see, they get taken out. So I'll try a different version of chillrend, put Dawnbreaker in, and then put Spellbreaker in, and they all work there. If I just remove everything out there, it disappears. So the other thing is I said that I've restricted it, so nothing else can go in. So if I just try an iron dagger, throws it back and says invalid item. And the same with gold. And that's the thing, the script is also set up so if you put in like 40 pieces of gold, it will make sure it gives you the correct amount back. So it throws anything you put in right back. And that is it for this video, so I hope you found it useful. All the links for the resources are in the description below. And of course, if you do plan on using any of my display cases, any of my resource, which does include the scripts in this video, then please be sure to leave me relevant credit in the description below. All the details are on my Skyrim Nexus page. And of course, be sure to leave comments, let me know what you thought, any other videos for scripting that you'd like to see. I do plan on doing a couple of other things that I have in mind. You can also check out my website at www.darkfox127.co.uk as shown on the screen now, and you can also check me out on all my social media. I mostly post on Facebook, but I am available on Twitter and also Google Plus and a couple of others. And I also have a Steam page which you can go and visit and follow, so you get all of the updates and also when I'm streaming live. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.